welcome. Take it up with Jessica Lee. I'm here with Adamo Maino, who is the Director of Customer Support at FinancialFo. Hi, and how are you, Adamo?
Good, good. Thank you very much. Glad to be on the show. Thank you.
It's a tough time for everyone, and I know you have a team of 17 people you're managing globally in various continents. Um, how is it going for you?
It's doing well. I think we, initially when COVID hit, we definitely had some challenges, and luckily we had some processes that helped, that were very collaborative based processes that helped us through that. I think we had to sort of adjust like everyone else. As far as being remote as a team on a technical level, that was fairly simple. We're a SaaS-based company. We're completely in the cloud. None of our applications are, anything that we have to even sort of VPN into. So it was just super easy in that sense. But it was more about the how we work and where do we prioritize and how do we shift that work across the business to help out. I think those were sort of the bigger questions. And, I think, again, I think we had some great tools already in place to help with that.
Yeah, I feel like often we focus on customers needing help, and your team actually of the agents, the customer support managers themselves need support during this time because we are all now suddenly not socializing like we used to. I think that's a challenge. And then we have kids at home also who needs help logging into their class. So not everybody has the space to have their own office at home, right? So it's a huge stress, I think, on everyone. I'm wondering how your team is doing given these additional changes and the stress that comes with that. How have they handled that?
I think initially this was one of the biggest changes I think any companies have ever had to go through, at least any sort of modernized companies have ever had to go through. And so I think there was a sort of the tactical level, of how to do this. And we had, I have two kids and myself. And so, just at home, how do we sort of organize that? But then there's this whole idea of, how do you source out that work as a team as well? So we had a couple mothers that were and fathers that were running more point in the house than their partner. And so they're not going to have a full day. I don't think, anybody with kids is going to have a full day period, but specifically if you're a primary sort of caretaker in that household, you're definitely not going to have a full day. So how do we do that? And I think with our team, we have a very tight team. We look out for each other. And so socially speaking, it was a little bit easier because we would just sort of shift cases away from those who had either childcare or parental care duties, and those who could take more took more. And that worked out pretty well. And then beyond the sort of tactical level, I think this was this whole emotional one. And this is one that, I thought was actually the most challenging as a leader. You have to stay focused as a leader, and you have to promote, sort of positivity through all of this. And so you got to make sure that you're taking care of yourself in that process. Take your time out in the day, take your 10 minutes after work, decompress, do whatever you need to do, but, go for a walk. But you have to reset as well so that you can be strong for your team. I think a lot of that was just sort of valuing what they had to say. And, you can't gloss over things, specifically if someone's saying, I'm having just a hard time emotionally with all of this. You can't just sort of say, it's okay, it's going to be fine. That is not a good answer, because you can't make promises that it's going to be fine in a week or 2 weeks or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I think being able to sort of empathize with your team and value what they're having to say and understand where they're coming from, I think that's really sort of makes you a stronger team together.
When you say that emotionally it's challenging for others more so, uh, do you find that those who need to socialize in order to energize themselves, now they're not doing that anymore? Say the introverts who liked to socialize via the colleagues in an office environment, but not necessarily going out after work to socialize, but just that work interaction has been the socializing experience for them, and now they can't do that. Is that a tougher situation for them then?
Yeah, I think it's funny. I always thought that and I'm an absolute extrovert, right? So I always thought that the extroverts were going to have it rougher. I really did. If you can't go out with your friends and your family, and you can't, meet up for dinners and hang out in the park with 15, 20, people and all their kids, that's going to be sort of a soul crusher, right? And so, but it was the introverts that sort of flipped my perception about about like sort of a whole nother sector of work. I had this really sort of intimate conversation with one of my team members, and he'd said, I was like, oh, well, you got your setup, you got things that you got, like, again, from a tactical level, you've got your monitors, you got your desk, you're all set up. And I was like, and then, like, he's like, we joke all the time. So I was like, as sort of an introvert, I imagine this is probably okay for you. And he's like, no, this is horrible for me. He's like, the times for me to get into work, like, that's my time to get out and socialize, and it forces me to get there. So if I'm doing 4 days a week, in the office, 1 day at home, sort of thing, like, those 4 days are very important to me. And so that was a huge reset, and it's funny, we kind of have these ideas in our head, and our blinders are turned on in certain ways, and it doesn't matter how long you've been managing teams. That I just think that you get like a reset like that, and you're like, oh wow, I did not think that was going to be the thing, right? I mean, that was not going to be the thing here. And so then you have to sort of feel like, okay, well, how do we make these things better, right? And like, how do we still function cohesively and socially? And it's hard, right? I mean, when you're doing like when you're doing sort of things like, maybe we'll just have like a happy hour once a week sort of thing, right? I mean, it's great, you can run with that for a little bit, and then it sort of, it doesn't always, keep it up, right? You're not always going to have that, and people's interest levels are going to drop. And then, so we tried different things, right? We tried that. We had like a yoga workshop, where we had a yoga instructor come in, and he did some yoga for us remotely on, Zoom. And so we just have to, try different things to sort of keep the pace and that social cohesion.
Right, right.
We're doing like a wine tasting from one of my favorite wineries, and the winemaker is going to do like a virtual wine tasting. And like, I think you just kind of have to keep that going and mix it up.
Right, right.
You try to do the same thing over and over every week, it's going to you're not going to get the same buy-in, right?
Yeah, I think one game that would be easy to do virtually that I think would be really fun is charade, because then you can use the video to start interacting remotely in this game. So I would recommend trying that, because that's a fun game to do with anyone.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Yeah, I think it's good. I think it's about, and every person has their individual sort of interests, right? Not everyone's into wine, obviously, or happy hours. And, I had one person who was trying to find some things to do. And, both of us love music and making music, listening to music. And so we talked about that. And that was just one thing that was very cathartic for her. And so she started getting back into that, and that, helped quite a bit. But yeah, I mean, California, obviously we've been hit pretty hard. Like, we got the COVID, then we got the fires. It's like, it's like literally the state's on fire, right? So I think it's important to sort of really value what your team's saying, and not have like this perception that, you have like a track that you've got going on in your head, that you're going to lift all these people up and it's all going to be the same across the board, because it's just not. We're in sort of uncharted waters here. And so I think a lot of it's just, turning your ears on and keeping your mouth shut for a while and just like really just like listening to what they have to say during your one-on-ones and your team meetings.
And do you think the changes you're making now, will some of that stay in place even after we're allowed to get back together?
I think one of like the best things out of, I mean, again, I don't think like I would rather not had COVID at all. Like I obviously, it's just it's a horrific pandemic and it's taken a lot of lives. Our team's been, personally affected by that.
Mm.
And so like there's just it is horrible. But I think in those times, when people band together, it does create this unity that you just can't really replicate, and so people are just they're nicer to each other and they're more empathetic, and we take more time in our conversations, and our one-to-ones don't always have to be about metrics and even sort of like career development conversations. Like sometimes I'll be in a one-to-one and people just want to get things off their chest and
Yes.
talk, you know,
Yes.
empathize and talk about the day and the week and how we've gotten through it. And I think that is just as important as everything else. I think you have to have those conversations. Otherwise your team's going to sort of be emotionally crippled at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. Adamo, I know it's a tough time, and you talked about your team being affected by COVID personally, actually. So you're saying that your team members have caught COVID? And is that what you're saying?
Yeah, we had a couple members of our team catch COVID across across our wider company as well, and then we even sadly we someone's family member died of COVID, and so it was I think it's affected us at a not just as a resource level, but I think emotionally people feel that across the board, and you're sort of there's the sort of those feelings of fear and anxiety and sadness and empathy towards your coworkers and where they are. And so and those are that's rough, right? It's not one of those things where you have sort of an isolated event and then you can get back to sort of some normalcy in your life and recharge and then be able to support your team with that. It's you're in it, like you're in it with them, and you're feeling all those you're feeling those same feelings, and you're trying your best to understand where they're coming from, and it's tough. Like again, unprecedented times. Like I think it's so important for managers to sort of step back and not make assumptions, and start being leaders and coaches. And we got to give a little through this thing. I think it's important really to sort of give a little bit of space, give a little bit of headroom, because
Mm-hmm.
um, there's a lot of stress out there, and I think it's important to acknowledge it and value that, and understand where everyone else is coming from. So I'm hoping that carries over after we get a vaccine and we start rolling through COVID, and we're able to get past this. But I'm really hoping that we learn from this and we learn to empathize more through our partners and our internally in companies, and just generally who you speak to on the street. I think if that's what comes out of this and we're able to sort of get a positive, that's what I'm very hopeful for.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And how about the customer community? Have you seen your own customers being affected? And is there a change in how they approach business, the interactions between the support agents and the customers at all?
Yeah, I think especially initially, I think, there was a sort of this, we were always busy. Like we didn't, support never stops, right? So, I think there's this notion like you've got less cases or something during COVID, but that just never happened. We just continued right on through it. And um, so we were just as busy, and we had to support our customers the same. And the customers, businesses got hit, differently. Some of them actually did very well just because of the way they were positioned. Others, especially like in travel industry and hotels, like that's rough. Like that is really rough to be in that industry right now. So then I think there's this understanding, that we're trying to drive across support teams. Like we've got to be more empathetic to where they are and where they, how they're sort of raising cases. Like there's going to be a certain amount of, sort of angst and like fuel to like make sure that their companies are surviving. And, our set of customers go from, SMB to mid-market all the way to enterprise. And obviously if you're a big enterprise company, more than likely you're going to survive this, right? You're going to make the right decisions. You're going to hold capital, and you're going to be able to, to navigate through this just because of your sort of sheer size and reach. But when you get down to like small business and even like, sort of mid-market, you've got companies that are just like, this is a long time for them to be affected. And the not knowing, sort of when, if somebody said in 2 months, everything's going to be back on track and you're a small business, it's like, okay, like I got a plan for that. Right. But if we don't know that sort of that fear of the unknown, then when those customers are calling in, you got to be just sort of extra empathetic, and like they might be really charged, and you can kind of hear that coming through. But like that's all the more reason to take care of them and to see if we can help them. And that's not just from like a support perspective, like just our team. I think our company's just done an incredible job reaching out to our customers and seeing where they're at, and then helping customers, in need that are just like really just having a, sort of a tough time going through things. So I think this is, I think, and I see that across other, organizations as well. I'm part of this group that we meet, and it's the same for them. They look out for their customers. There's a sort of this, it's not like, they can't make a payment sort of thing. One of my friends has a larger business, but they have like a monthly payments, reoccurring payments. And he said the same thing. Small business has gotten hit. And so he's done deferred payments across the small business, and they'll pick it up when they, get back. Right. And so I think it's about sort of that ecosystem of helping each other out.
Yes, I think it's a tough time, and this is where you see people truly show how sympathetic they can be, how considerate, how thoughtful, and how kind they can be. I appreciate you being on the show to talk about this emotional aspect of the business world. We often don't really talk about, but thank you so much for sharing.
You bet. Thank you.
There you have it. Check it out with Jessica Lee, Adamo Maino from FinancialFo.